Hello and welcome to Kitt Penfold Astrology. My name is Kitt and welcome to another weekly Astro forecast for the week of October 26th to November 1st. I don't know if I'm ready to say November 1st, but it certainly feels like it outside, so hey ho, let's just go with it. This is our first week where we're going to have the sun in Scorpio the whole time, where we have our first week of Neptune retrograde back in Pisces. Have you been feeling that? This kind of old grief, I would almost dare to call it a little bit of depression, a weight that has come back into your life to be looked at one more time. And boy, I can say that I've been feeling it over here. If you've been feeling that and want to share, like, where do you have Pisces in your chart and what rising sign you are and how it's been affecting you, come share in the comments, because I truly think that community is what will get us through all of these ups and downs of life and of astrology. Before I begin on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and onward for the daily Astro forecast, I want to mention some pieces that are kind of going on the whole time and are kind of going on for probably a lot longer than this week. Before I get into Sunday's astrology and carrying on through the week, I want to talk about some things that are going on for kind of the long haul, maybe are going to be affecting us until December. Things that are going on in the chart, in the sky right now, but not necessarily needing to be talked about every week as an event because it's happening in the background. And I bet you we're feeling it. Example, the first thing that we're going to touch on is Chiron retrograde in Aries squaring Jupiter. So here we go, right here we have Chiron at 24 degrees retrograde, and we have Jupiter 24 degrees, not retrograde yet, but about to be. This has already been happening for quite a few weeks, this square between Aries and Cancer. Chiron in Aries could be a wound that speaks to identity. Aries is the I am. It's the initiatory cardinal sign that we start the zodiac with. So in that way, we may be having a bit of a struggle with embracing our identity or a piece of our identity that we may have always kind of squashed down, or a piece of ourselves that feels truer now that we're going through all of these beautiful evolutions, and we have to learn to embrace it, learn to embrace maybe what it is that we were told in the first place that made us stamp it down. This Chiron is squaring Jupiter. There really isn't a better planet or point, in my opinion, for Chiron to be squaring. Jupiter is benefic. It is supportive even when it's in a square, and even when Chiron is technically applying to Jupiter, meaning that the wound, the Chiron element, is what is instigating the Jupiter energy to be lit up. But in this case, with it being Jupiter, there's a really beautiful thing around this wound bringing wisdom, this wound bringing expansion. And as I always say, and I probably will happen to say in every single video that I ever do, Jupiter doesn't bring us what we want, it brings us what we need. Because ultimately, our highest and best lived life is learning and evolving to become the best person that we can be in this lifetime. Chiron and Jupiter stay square until January of next year. So we've got a little while to process and work through whatever is coming up right now. They're going to square for a little bit of time next June as well, and then again after that. But at that point, Chiron is going to be in Taurus and Jupiter is going to be in Leo. So we'll have that discussion when we get there. This Chiron wound sensitivity coming up and being expanded by Jupiter really reminds me of one of the most incredible pieces of education that I have learned around somatic healing, working with the nervous system. This plays back to my years with endometriosis, my hysterectomy surgery, and learning about the nervous system also from a nervous system specialist named Irene Lyon and also Nicole Lose, who are two practitioners that have helped me greatly on my path forward working with the nervous system. These past wounds, all of us have some of some kind, even if we've had the most privileged childhood, most beautiful family life around us. All of us have bumps and scrapes of some sort. And depending on the spectrum, where it is you land, you will normally find that if something that hurts comes up, we don't want to give it space. We don't want to feel that pain. We kind of want to take it down a notch or two, don't let it come up. And like maybe for a day or two, we'll be like, oh, it's there. But to really look at it can be really hard and really overwhelming. When Chiron is squaring Jupiter, you can't help but make that wound a little bigger or feel like it's not just in the periphery anymore. It's starting to come around in focus in front of you. And this practice in somatic healing and nervous system work is having a moment with yourself where if that pain, if that wound or sensitivity comes up that you usually would be like, no, I want to make that a little smaller and put that over here, bringing it round in front of you and energetically giving it some space. Telling even it, if you see it in front of you, say, you know what, I'm gonna widen this for you so that you can take up some more space right now. That was a terrifying thing for me to do the first time that I did it, but it was incredible to notice that the moment I allowed the pain some space in my energy field, it wasn't as scary. It wasn't as difficult to deal with. It was almost like the more that I tamped it down and the smaller I tried to make it, the more it would scream, the louder it was trying to become, like a little mini earthquake going on in there. And the moment I gave it energy to breathe, it wasn't in that panic state anymore of like, I really need you to look at me. Not only did it help me come to a place where I was able to heal that piece just a little bit more, but the actual process of giving it space was healing. I really see that mirrored here with this Chiron square Jupiter. So let me know what you think about that in the comments and tell me if you feel like there has been space for your wounds or things that are coming up right now, or have you been tamping them down? Because this one is not going anywhere and it really is ultimately supporting us as we move forward as the person that we are becoming. Jupiter is kind of like the hot topic right now because the other thing that is happening over quite a long period of time is Saturn and Neptune retrograde in Pisces, now together because Neptune has just regressed back into Pisces, trining Jupiter in Cancer. This is a trine that is kind of this core base of what we're seeing as the grand water trines. As I said in last week's forecast and in my deep dive, it's whatever planet is coming through Scorpio over the next couple months that completes the grand part of this trine. But what is holding it all together is this conversation and supportive groundwork being created and laid by Saturn and Neptune and Jupiter. This trine is continuing until December 19th. So this, again, is something that we are going to be feeling over a long period of time. This won't be the last time I talk about it, but we're going to be feeling it for a long period of time. One quick thing I do want to say about this trine, when is anything I ever say quick, is that because Saturn is involved in this, Saturn is a malefic planet. It is a planet that usually brings a bit of struggle and challenge to our life so that we can grow. And then Neptune, who just likes dissolving things. And in its highest and lightest delineation, it is mysticism, it's ethereal thinking, it is intuition, and being able to kind of live in modern astrology, live in the Piscean, watery, beautiful, emotional, intuitive depths. But when it's in retrograde and when it's next to Saturn, these two planets have been playing together in our lives this entire year, asking us in Pisces where we're learning to lean into our intuition and our trust on a really deep level. Saturn brings about real life themes. This isn't about leaning into trust just for the sake of it. You're being asked to lean into trust and intuition on something that probably makes you turn around and go, how can you possibly ask me to trust and have intuition around something which is so detrimental to my paying bills, my being able to have a great relationship, my being able to trust myself and be able to create a new relationship with myself. These are serious conversations. So even though this trine is a trine and we want it to mean, hey, we're going to win the lottery, we're going to do all of these amazing things, this is probably coming up wherever you have Pisces in your chart in a place that feels quite serious. But Jupiter again is lending this wisdom and this expansion to this topic that is allowing you to lean into trust and intuition in a way where it almost feels out of your control. There's no way you can't take this forward in a new way than you've done it in the past. And with the fact that this is the last time that Saturn and Neptune are going to be in Pisces for a really long time, this retrograde, again, rethink, reevaluate, all of the words, that is what you're being asked to bring into practice at the moment and have one last look at this piece in Pisces before they turn direct and move on to Aries, where we had a little window in the summer of feeling what it was like to have Saturn and Neptune in Aries before they turned retrograde, and then that energy probably left pretty quickly. But we have a significant shift coming up when these two turn direct, number one, but then enter Aries and move forward in their process. Again, because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. So we're finishing something up here, all being supported by Jupiter in a long-term way, like until December. We have this trine happening. And then whatever planet is coming through Scorpio at those late degrees is then kind of bringing either conversation into the mix, instigation into the mix, the sun illuminating pieces of ourselves, the sun in Scorpio illuminating inner pieces of ourselves. Venus coming along is going to lend this kind of harmonious and maybe like self-love piece to this whole conversation. But really the bed and the foundation of this is Saturn and Neptune doing its last work in Neptune in the last sign of the zodiac before we start this kind of whole new thing, whole new theme when they get into Aries. The first sign, the I am, the 0 and 1 degree of Aries being that absolute, like ultimate inception period of moving forward. So don't take this time lightly, because I know that it probably doesn't feel like you can take it lightly. You're being asked to and supported to, thank you, Jupiter, to really look at these pieces one last time, learn these last lessons before they move forward. And this will be sticking around for a while. So also, you don't have to rush. We also just have a couple more weeks of Pluto in Aquarius, trining, again, that wonderful supportive aspect, Uranus in Gemini. The reason that they are going to be not trining each other anymore is because Uranus is moving retrograde right now back into Taurus. This is yet another planet that is skipping over those borders of two different houses in your chart, merging together the themes of those two houses. So when Uranus moves back to 29 degrees of Taurus, technically this trine ends in the whole house system, which is what I use. Uranus regresses back into Taurus on November 7th. We're going to be finding out in the next few weeks that kind of a lot of major things are happening in November, all part of our journey as we create our new paradigms, new energy selves into 2026. Because Uranus is retrograde, it takes all of those themes of the Great Awakener, the downloads, the disruption, the change that Uranus loves to bring into our lives and brings it inward. So an inner revolution, this transformative, slow, deep to the depths kind of unearthing that Pluto loves to do with us because he moves so slow. Then trining Uranus, so transformation of ourselves wherever you have Aquarius in your chart, supporting this inner revelation, revolution, inner awakening that Uranus is bringing into our life. You may be revisiting retrograde themes, choices that you made about 4 months ago when Uranus first came into Gemini for just this little window for us to see what was going to be happening. But now when it goes back into Taurus, we have this last moment of figuring out what are the lessons that I'm being called to bring into place. You would have felt some pretty monumental shifts probably when Uranus was in those last degrees of Taurus earlier this year. Coming into Gemini may have felt like a whole new cerebral complex and maybe fast moving. Have you noticed how fast time feels like it's moving right now? When Uranus gets back into Taurus, we're probably going to notice a lot of things slow down. Uranus is an earth sign. We don't have much earth going on at the moment. A lot of these planets are in air and in water. So it'll be an interesting moment when we have Uranus go back into Taurus. Not to mention, it'll end this trine with Pluto. Okay, let us get on with Sunday morning. Good morning if you are watching this Sunday morning or any time in the week. This is pretty much useful any time of the week or even in the future, to be honest. If you're someone like me who likes to watch things from the past to see how it affected what I was doing. Sometimes my journal entries can't expose what it is that was changing in my life until I'm much farther forward. One last thing before I begin, you're probably going to notice that I don't talk about the moon in these forecasts. The moon only takes about 2.5 days to move through each sign, and it is really important in your chart. It marks our emotion self. It marks our moods. It really does come into play in how we're feeling on a real day-to-day basis. But for me to add them to these weekly forecasts would make them probably 2 hours long. So I leave the moon out unless there's something like a new moon or a full moon or something like pretty amazing happening. So bless you, moon. I love you so much, but you won't find her too much in these forecasts. Sunday, October 26, 2025, we wake up in the morning and we have Mercury at 26 degrees Scorpio, which is in its exact trine to Saturn in Pisces. Saturn is retrograde. So right now, Mercury is at kind of its peak of completing this grand water trine between it in Scorpio, Saturn Neptune retrograde in Pisces, and Jupiter in Cancer. This is a major flow of energy. Like I was saying in my intro, I do see Saturn and Jupiter kind of being the foundation of this grand water trine, being that they are in trine for such a long time. But when this third point is introduced, the flow isn't just stopped between two planets. Now it's in a circle. Or a triangle. But now it has the chance this energy can flow in all sorts of directions. So we have communication, intellect, wisdom. We have long-term thoughts, goals, plans, and introspective energy because of so much being retrograde, and an intuitive, emotion-led energy because these are the water signs. Mercury being in Scorpio, that is investigative. That is diving deep. Scorpio wants to be able to look at things on a level that sometimes a lot of people aren't really very interested in going to those depths. So if you don't have much Scorpio in your chart, like many planets or points in Scorpio in your chart, this may be really new for you. This might be like a depth that you're like, no, especially because we have so many core planets being here. We also had the moon there just now. So if you are someone who doesn't usually feel this kind of scorpionic depth, emotion, watery feeling, hang in there and embrace it a little bit. Let your put on some black clothes. Join me because all I own is black clothing. But put on something that's a bit edgier. Delve to the deeps with your partner or your friend or your family member about something, because this is Mercury. You have the ability to communicate. Wherever you have Pisces and Cancer in your chart is really going to tell you where that foundation is being laid at the moment. And now that you are being able to talk about it, some shifts in movement forward might be being really supported. Just remember that grand water trines, even though it's a trine and that is supportive, it may not feel amazing. This is a lot of water. And again, this is a lot of planets in water signs. You may feel flooded. It may feel like there's no way that you can get your head up for air right now. If you're feeling that way, remember that these moments allow us to evolve, allow us to bloom. It's only the rain and the showers in the spring that allow plants to grow. And I know that kind of, as cliche as that analogy is, it's true in every possible sense. One thing I'll mention with this grand water trine and the fact that we've talked about Saturn and Jupiter being trined is that the reason that Jupiter is kind of such a hot topic right now is because it is slowing down and preparing to station retrograde, which it'll do on November 11th. The last thing that we can see here on Sunday is that the sun 3 degrees of Scorpio is slowly separating from its square with Pluto, which will be really nice for all of us because we're having kind of an ego transformation right now. And with the sun being in Scorpio, the sun kind of illuminates inward instead of illuminating outward like it usually does. The sun is neither in its like exaltation or in its fall here. It's pretty neutral. But when it's in the house of Mars, because Mars rules Scorpio, it takes on a bit of a Mars energy. So a lot of willpower and an instigative energy to dive deep. And then of course, what happens when you dive deep is that you start feeling a lot of transformation. So this could have felt really gritty and quite challenging between the two houses that you have Scorpio and that you have Aquarius right now. So have a look in your chart and even let me know how this hit for you, because for me, it definitely was interesting because Scorpio is my 10th, which is career house, and Aquarius is my first house. So me, and boy, oh boy, there's a lot of action right now happening for my career house and for me, which is asking me to up level, to look at things really differently. I mean, all blessings, right? But wow. Let's move to Monday. We have Mercury here in Scorpio slowly separating out of its grand water trine. As you can see, there is now no trining aspect to Jupiter because it has left that 3-degree orb. Again, this is a real kind of, in traditional astrology, 3 degrees is the orb that astrologers use, but there's some that love to use 10. There's some that believe that if it's in the sign at all, like entirely of Scorpio, that it's still trining. So if you're still feeling the feeling like Jupiter is expanding the voice or what have you, it probably is. This is just the way that I practice, because if I didn't put some rules and boundaries in place, everything would be happening all at once and my head would probably pop off. Right now, on Monday, October 27th, Mercury is, to me, separating and starting to get closer to that ingress into Sagittarius. Mercury is also in its shadow still this week, remember. So the pre-retrograde shadow period, there is this window of space that it's going to be traveling forward, retrograde, back, forward again between 6 degrees of Sagittarius. And at this very moment, I can't remember what the degrees was back here, 20? So right now, Mercury is setting itself up to go into Sagittarius and also station retrograde. It is still in trine with Saturn and Neptune retrograde in Pisces. So you will still feel this weighty understanding, maybe conceptualizing new pieces around what is happening for you and what you're setting up for the long term as Saturn and Neptune are retrograding and doing this last little piece in Pisces again. Really find out what's happening in Pisces for you right now in your chart. Where is it? What house is it? What planets do you have in there? Is this lighting any of them up? This feels like it's moving slow, but if you have planets or points that are either in Scorpio underneath this transit of Mercury or Mars, or under Saturn and Neptune, or the North Node in Pisces, or where Jupiter is, that's a big deal. The next thing that's happening on Monday is Mars here at 24 degrees of Scorpio is in full trine to Jupiter. So signifying focused, strategic growth, purposeful, emotional drive. And again, those themes that Saturn's bringing into place, like the long term. Mars is kind of courage and discipline to act, which will work really well for whatever it is that we're working on in Pisces at the moment. I think this is going to create a wonderful drive, whereas Mercury a planet that kind of takes on whatever energy of the planet or a ruling planet or a sign. It loves to kind of take on the energy of what's around it. Whereas Mars, it very much knows what it's about. Mercury may have kind of set us up to feel like we know what it is we need to do, but may not have helped us feel like we could get over a line, especially in a conversation or things like that. Maybe something wasn't quite put in place, but now Mars is here. We got the god of war ready to, don't go to war, because that's not going to help. But Mars allows us kind of the courage and the drive to move whatever it is that Mercury may have set up for us. To me, this is one of the most constructive of all of the water trines, because Mars is speaking to whatever energies are coming up right now. I'm really excited for this one, even though I have been kind of getting blown apart by Mars over the last 8 months. Mars will stay in this grand water trine until November 1st. So we have some time with this over the next few days of this whole week that we're talking about right here. And then Mars will stay in trine to Saturn and Neptune until it enters Sagittarius on November 4th, so next week. Moving on to Tuesday, October 28th, everything's kind of the same. We are moving forward with Mercury, it's at 29 degrees of Scorpio. It's just about ready to move into Sagittarius. It just has one more degree to go. And Mars is doing this grand water trine really well for us. And I love when these moments happen, because it doesn't mean that every single day we're getting hit by new things. We have a little bit of time with this. I said before, I'm not going to bring up the moon, but I do want to mention that when the moon hits 28 degrees of Capricorn, we're at the first quarter moon after the new moon that we just had in Libra last week. That was a really potent new moon of creating a new cycle for ourselves. And a first quarter moon, if we divide everything up into quarters in the chart, it just means that we are 1/4 of the way around. And that means that we are probably at a point where we seeded something back last week, and now maybe we're at a point where we're at a follow through or movement forward, and maybe we're seeing some of what we put into place last week at the new moon starting to take shape, take form. And it could also maybe be testing some things that we wanted to take shape or take form. So just keep an eye on the moon when it's doing things like this, because of course the next thing it's going to do when it comes around one more quarter is we're going to have the full moon in Taurus. Okay, welcome to Wednesday, October 29th. This is a day all about Mercury. Mercury has just ingressed or moved into Sagittarius. Mercury in Sagittarius, it's in its detriment. It can't do its best work. It's not at home. Its home is actually right across here in opposition in Gemini, which then usually means that when that planet who is at home in a sign over here, when it enters the sign across from it, it's in its detriment. Mercury is out on a trip right now in a foreign country, doesn't eat the food, doesn't speak the language. It's difficult to work here. It doesn't mean that Mercury can't do work that we would love it to do, but it means that Mercury has to kind of adhere to the home of the planet that does rule Sagittarius, and that is Jupiter over here. Mercury in the home of Jupiter means that it may speak boldly, Sagittarius, try to be a leader, wonderful, but it might speak with conviction that kind of outruns precision or thought. If you feel like you kind of recognize these themes, it's because Mercury is also setting itself up to retrograde in Sagittarius at 6 degrees on November 9th. So whatever happens between here, October 29th and November 9th, just keep in mind that you're going to be coming back to rethink this, maybe redo it, rewrite it. It may be easy to say a lot here, but just have some thought. Hindsight is 20/20, but try to bring that into your present at the moment, because Sagittarius is a big thinking sign, and that is why it's ruled by Jupiter. Big thinking, big wisdom, expansion. So when Mercury ingresses into Sagittarius, just bring a little bit of tempering into that. And before you speak, try to think about, is this something that I can do? Is this something that I can actually follow through on? Or should I wait until the retrograde is over and Mercury comes back into Sagittarius before taking action, what have you? That is not all that Mercury is doing on Wednesday, October 29th. Mercury is also sextiling Pluto. So communication through transformation, ideas and inner messages coming forward on what you want to create from this new transformative place that Pluto is coming from in Aquarius. Aquarius is very much of the humanities. Aquarius is kind of, I like to think of it as the serial entrepreneur. Welcome to Kitt. And with Mercury speaking to it, there might be some big ideas coming forward. These are the things that we kind of need to temper a bit until it goes retrograde and comes back in, and maybe then things can get implemented or talked about with a large group that could possibly take everything forward for you. Bring out your journal for this one, and I'm sure several other things that I've just said in the past. The Mercury energy here might be bringing up ideas that are ready to be moved forward in the new you and the new self, but not just yet. So write them down somewhere and come back to them. And the last thing that Mercury is doing is opposing beautiful Uranus over here, which is at 0 degrees of Gemini. It is so ready to move back into Taurus, but not quite yet. Uranus, again, is retrograde. So instead of the outer change and the outer awakenings and the outer rebellion, we're looking inward. Maybe sudden revelations around how you think and how you communicate are coming up within you instead of being introduced from outside of you. There's a possibility that you really want to communicate something radically honest. And maybe it's time to mull it over inside, or perhaps Uranus has already been mulling that thing over inside of you and it's time for you to speak it. But again, just make sure that it's something that you can follow through on. And opposition is quite challenging because it's like a bouncing back and forth of energies. To find balance between an opposition is a lifelong thing that one has to work on, especially if it's in a natal chart. And so right now it might be like cerebral thought movement, especially with the fact that Mercury rules the sign that Uranus is in. They're kind of talking to one another already in that sense, but you might be feeling this like tension and opposition between past reasoning and the way you would have done things in opposition to that future self and future truth that you're starting to see through everything happening in Pisces. So as you move forward from Wednesday and when Mercury slowly starts separating out from this opposition, again, journal around like what's coming up within you that you are ready to move forward with on a more intellectual level. What breakthroughs are happening within you before you kind of see them tangible in front of you? This same energy is happening as we head into Thursday. We have Mercury slowly coming out of opposition with Uranus, but it still is. And everyone else is still doing its grand water trine here. So this is time to sit with this energy. This is time to really integrate the messages and the patterns coming through. Friday is very much the same. Happy Halloween, by the way. Mercury is still in sextile with Pluto in Aquarius. It's still opposing Uranus in Gemini, even though it's just about finished there. And Mars is still doing its wonderful, much slower grand water trine. The one thing I do want to bring up that's happening is that Venus here at 21 degrees is slowly coming into opposition with Chiron that we spoke on in the introduction part of this video. There is a harmony slowly coming into place here because she's at 21 degrees. She is within 3 degrees of this 24 degree retrograde Chiron. She is in her domicile. She's in Libra, which is her home sign. So where do you have Venus and Libra in your chart at the moment? Is that a place where you are feeling like quite a bit of harmony? Now, Libra got lit up over the last month. So Venus right now might be cleaning up some mess that's been happening over the last month. And as she comes into this opposition with Chiron, it really does speak to whatever kind of pain, sensitivity, wound that you've been working through with that Chiron Jupiter piece. And now kind of what relational harmony can be brought in, what lessons are being taught in a very much more kind of self-love, self-care, maybe even art being able to come into this, finding some soothing support through music, through visuals. As you can see, there's two little red lines going on here. And so when Venus comes into opposition with Chiron, it'll be creating what's called a T-square, where two planets or points oppose one another, and then another is right in the middle, creating a T. And the planet that's in the middle is the one that's almost watching. It is the one that is able to speak directly to one or the other. And so you might find that Jupiter is expanding the Venusian side of things, and it's also expanding the Chironic side of things. I don't know if that's a word, but we're using it. If you feel like you recognize this T-square whole thing, it's because the sun actually did this aspect a few weeks ago, and that really illuminated the wound or the piece that Chiron was bringing up for us to look at. And then Jupiter was expanding and bringing wisdom to the sun and bringing expansion and wisdom to the wound, and it didn't really feel awesome, though I am someone who believes that any kind of pain and that kind of thing is good for the future. But with Venus coming in to this opposition and this T-square, it does feel like healing through relationship, healing through empathy, compassion, self-care, perhaps, maybe a reconciliation between self and other, and the expansion, Jupiter, of truth and love being able to heal all wounds, so to speak. And here we are on the last day, Saturday, November 1st. Welcome to November. Everything is still happening the exact same way. We have Mercury slowly getting farther away from that sextile with Pluto and the opposition with Uranus and Gemini. Mars still moving beautifully slow, thank you Mars, through this really constructive grand water trine, though at 27 degrees it is coming out of orb with Jupiter, but then it will stay trining Saturn and Neptune retrograde in Pisces whilst they trine Jupiter. So feel into the kind of this change in energy and see if you notice the fact that it's not a full grand water trine moving forward into the first week of November. Venus is also only 1 degree away from completing this T-square and this opposition to Chiron. So really take care of yourself over the weekend. Bring in whatever kind of Venusian themes you can into your life. That is music, art, soothing, soft, wonderful clothes, wonderful scents. Maybe you have some favorite food that you can bring into your life. Right now, I am really noticing how Neptune being in Pisces, the grand water trines, and Pluto is in my first house, and the Chiron being in Aries in my third house with Jupiter, that whole square, it's really bringing home the fact that I redid the bathroom on this house, but I haven't finished it yet. My beautiful brand new bathtub is not finished being tiled yet, and yesterday I realized that the only way I'm going to get through the next few months is if I get that goddamn tiling done. So yesterday I did a lot of work late at night, and when I was probably way too tired, and I'm a little scared to see if everything's a bit wonky in there. But that's the kind of thing that I am going to need over the next few months. And I think Venus probably coming into opposition with Chiron was helping me understand that I'm going to need that kind of self-love in this lovely house that is so not close to being complete yet. Thank you so much for tuning in to another weekly Astro forecast. Again, my name is Kitt, that is with 2 T's. And if you'd like to explore how this is hitting you in your natal chart, head over to my website, kittpenfold.com, and book a reading with me. I have full readings, and I also have what's called the mini inbox Astro, which is something that is very easy on the wallet, and you don't have to schedule a time. It just arrives in your inbox within 5 days of you ordering it, and you can put into it like what it is you want me to focus on. So if you watch this video, let me know that you watched it and you want to know like what's happening this week when it comes to your own natal chart. How are things hitting you? How does this all pertain to you? Also, if you don't already follow me on Instagram, I am over there at Kitt Penfold Astrology. And also the music that you're hearing at the moment, this is mine as well. This is a tune called Housecoat. If any of you are in kind of a hermit mode at the moment and you feel like you need to be snuggling at home in your house coat, this song is really for you. So if you want to listen to this tune, head to my description just below. There's links to my music, my Instagram, my website, all of it is there. And the most important thing that you could do for me right now is give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I am new to the YouTube and the Instagram world, and so I'm just building these social medias for myself, and I really appreciate any kind of support like that will help me get these videos out to new eyes, new hearts, new energies. See you next week for another weekly Astro forecast.
Won't even touch me. It's only my wardrobe keeping me safe.